good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
So, thank you for inviting me to come talk to all of you today. I arrived in Korea last night, and I'm leaving tomorrow morning, a 10 a.m. flight. And because I am also a student, I have a lot of homework, a lot of reading, so I have saved it for the plane. So when Sam told me about this opportunity to speak with all of you, I was very excited. And I knew that I had to be here. So thank you again for letting me talk to all of you today. As a full-time student myself, I hope that we can all stay in touch. You're learning things, I'm learning things, and today is just an opportunity for us to share some of the things that we're learning. And I really think that today I will learn from you as well. So I really believe that. So this is technology, right? Education technology. So right away when you came, you had to do this. So thank you for being patient. Today, I'm going to focus on student engagement. I'll talk about what that means from my perspective. And then I also have made a sample lesson. So today, all of you will also get to pretend to be my students. So you need to pretend that you're maybe 12 years old, 8 years old, and we're gonna have some fun together. And on the plane here, I was thinking, you know, how can I make this lesson really fun, really exciting? And I'm just excited to share that with all of you. So I wanted to show you how I have this set up so you can make sure you're looking at the right screens. Joyce mentioned that I worked at Nearpod. So before I went to Harvard, I was a product manager at a company called Nearpod. It's based in Miami, Florida. So I spent 2 years there developing curriculum for teachers who work with English learners in the United States. So Nearpod, I love this software. It's free. So everything that I'm showing you today on Nearpod, you can also use in your classroom the moment you leave. It's free. So what I have here is a projection of what you're seeing on your device, on your phone or on your computer. And what I have on my hand, this is the teacher device. This is like a TV remote. So if I click on the next slide, I'm able to control the pace of the lesson. So I don't have to stand there. I can walk around. I can be over here. I can be over here as long as I have this as well. So I recommend that all of you to look at either the screen on top or you can look at your phone that's in front of you. The reason that we use Nearpod is it's interactive. There will be moments when I will ask that you do some activities in Nearpod. And there'll be also moments when I ask you to type on your phone. So as we go through this presentation, I'd like you to pay attention to here, but also look at your device, your screen. And it'll allow you to be more engaged, and you'll be able to also share and write things that all of your classmates will be able to see. So are we okay with trying our first activity on Nearpod?
Yes.
Okay. How many of you have heard of Nearpod before? I was just wondering. Okay. Couple, okay. So Nearpod, by the way, is used in 3 out of 10 districts in the United States. It's a very popular tool. A lot of teachers use it. So I'm going to do this really simple question, and I'm curious to know what you want to learn today. So on your computer or on your phone, you can type something here. So I'm going to go up there and I will type a question that I have for myself and for all of you. And you can watch me do it if you would like, and you can try it on your own. So what do you want to learn today? So notice that as you type, all of your responses will appear on the screen, right? It's a very powerful activity because now I can see how all of you think, right? Remote education. How can make the class more interesting? Some of you just want to learn about technology. One person said they want to learn about virtual reality. I wrote that, actually. Happy, someone is just happy to be here. Well, whoever wrote that, thank you for being here. So thank you for doing this. This gives me an idea of where you're at. So on Collaborate, you can also add images. Do you see that? So it's a very good way to do a very quick check for how your students are doing. All right, so we're going to get started here. I want to share with you a few words that I hope you all can encourage you to focus on. One is today I would love if you all participate. So you can speak, you can type. Just ask that you challenge yourself to speak. If you are naturally someone who is quiet and shy, it's okay. You can type. So whether you want to speak or type, it's okay, but just participate. Number two, be open to new perspectives. So I'm going to share some new ideas with all of you. And you don't have to agree with everything, but it's good to think about them. And some of you might have a question that someone else might agree or disagree with, and it's okay, as long as we're talking about that and having conversation. And have fun, so whoever wrote happy, this is for you. We will have a lot of fun. I brought a virtual reality headset so we can experience what it's like to try out some technology that is hardware, not just software. All right, so I wanted to ask you what your biggest learning experience is between the ages of 13 and 18. Okay, so think back to when you were that age, and I would like you to turn to someone near you, or you can be in groups, but think about it and talk with someone close to you what you think was the biggest learning experience during that age for you. Okay.
Is this language related or no?
Doesn't have to be language related. Yes, good question. It can be anything. So I should hear speaking, right? So it's okay to speak. This is a good moment to speak.
I think between age 13 and 18 for me, I had a teacher actually at that time sort of taught with like PDF. And there were worksheets and stuff like that, but I developed the fact that touch things and write things down, do research, basic research. That sort of for me it wasn't that specific.
Okay, another 20 seconds. Okay, so we're going to wrap up, and I'm going to ask for volunteers. I should say, Vivian reminded me, I brought gifts for some of you. This is a shirt. So I'll try to give those. I don't have that many, but I have enough. So please speak up, and I will find ways to give you free swag. So what did you talk about? What was the biggest learning experience? Who would like to speak? Anyone? Share something? Would you like?
I many subjects at the time for university. So monthly test and quiz, many monthly tests and many quiz we had.
Wow. Wow, both of you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you have any ideas? Yes. No.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you. Yep, over here. Yep.
Please give me T-shirt.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I think my biggest learning experience was when I was like 13, 14 years old. At the time, I didn't like to draw something. But one of the day, the teacher said, "Oh, you have a good skill and you have a talent." Then I learned art skill in the academy at the time. The first day was very impressed. So I think it's the biggest learning for me in my life. Thank you.
So it sounds like you found your passion in drawing, or
Yeah, passion, and at the time.
okay. And you were 13 when you.
Yeah. When I was 13, I didn't have a dream at the time. Just like my father said, "Oh, you can be a woman soldier, female soldier." So
Okay.
I said, yes. Then at the time, just one of the teachers said, "Oh, you have a talent." Then
Wow.
just after that, maybe I have a talent.
Okay.
Then I just went to the academy. Then the first day was great. But that's why it's
Okay.
my biggest learning.
Okay. Hold on to that thought. We're gonna go back to it. I know who you are. You have the bright yellow shirt on, so I'm keeping you in my radar. Yes, over here, Joyce.
Thank you. My biggest learning experience when I was 18 years old. At the time, I created my own English conversation club with my classmate. And at the time, I think that when we started learning English, we focused on learning grammar and also translating English into Korean. But I was not sure, in this way we couldn't master English, especially in speaking and writing. So that's why I really want to speak English more fluently with my students. So my classmate, and that was my first experience when I started the club. I was very clumsy and also I was not fluent. But as time goes by, went by, we started to learn how to speak in English a little bit. Then first we started say hello and how are you? I'm fine, thank you. That was really automatic response. But at the end of the club, and we started to have a conversation with simple expression. That was my first experience.
I'm curious what made you decide to start it? It sounds like your teacher wasn't part of that, but you were, right?
Yeah. At the time, our teachers, I'm sorry, really, they were not qualified to teach English conversation. They just to let us, just to learn grammar. So,
Thank you. So, it's interesting because this question is very deep, right? When I think of my biggest learning experience when I was a teenager. If we had more time, I would ask more of you to share. But for the sake of time, I wanted to show a couple of things that may have come up in your personal conversation. By the way, I'll say that these slides you can have any time, so don't feel like you have to take all the notes. I can send that to you after the conversation. So I know you back there, she mentioned an adult, right? Somebody told the child, I really believe in this. You are doing a great job, and I think that you have a passion for this. So sometimes we may have an adult who is there with us and really believe in the child. Other times it might be personal interest, right? You started a club by yourself, you saw a problem, and you wanted to be the first person to solve the problem. You have a personal interest. Not measurable on a test. This is interesting, right? Sometimes the things that really excites us, the things that we remember the most, hopefully it's not the stress of taking a test. Maybe it's a moment of learning that is hard to measure on a written test, right? So that could be doing a club. How could I measure your drawing on a written test, right? So these are some things to think about. I wanted to share now a little bit of what we're going to talk about today now that we've had this conversation. And then I'll share a little bit of my childhood and my story with that. So today, in the next hour and 40 minutes or so, we're going to talk a little bit about what is student engagement and why is it important. This was the title of our presentation today. I'm going to share a sample lesson. We'll look at a case study in Memphis, Tennessee, in the United States. We'll look at a situation, like a real problem that teachers there are trying to solve. And we'll talk about ways that technology can help. And then I'll talk a little bit about chatting, which is also the company that I work at right now, with some of the colleagues here, my colleagues who are in this room today. So the lesson that I'm going to share on ocean pollution, it'll be a very interesting lesson. I think you'll like it. It's both language, English language, as well as content. So you can learn multiple things together. It doesn't just have to be, hello, how are you, I'm fine, back and forth. We're talking about a very important topic, pollution. So I'm going to jump ahead into, oh, this could be embarrassing for me. Here we go. So someone earlier was telling me that, so that's me in the middle. My father is on the right. Do you see the resemblance a little bit? So this was 1995. So I was born in China in a town called, well, it's a city, it's a big city, Xi'an, with the terracotta soldiers. And I left there when I was 5, went to Leeds, England, for primary school. And then I moved to Toronto for middle school, and then I came to Grand Rapids, Michigan for high school. So I've moved around a bit. I started to learn English when I was 5, and I think I always struggled with English. It was very hard for me. And the reason it was hard was I was learning Chinese. And Chinese and English do not mix together very well. And I think it took me probably until high school when I felt comfortable speaking English. So the time it takes to learn a language isn't 1 year, isn't 6 months. It's many, many years of practice. And even in my case, living in a country where everyone spoke English, it was still hard for me. So this is my family. Unfortunately, when I asked myself the question, as a teenager, what was my biggest learning experience? I really have a hard time answering that question because I was studying to take tests. I remember most of my high school, studying to take tests. There was very few moments when I felt that I was actually excited and motivated. And I would say I found that passion in college. So it took, 18 years to figure out what was the thing that made me really excited. This chart just is a survey done a few years ago, surveyed almost 1 million high school students, middle school students in the United States. And a couple of questions, I'll just briefly summarize that as students get older, in high school, their motivation and engagement goes down, right? Very significantly. Very significantly. So students don't feel excited about being in school. Students are bored. Students are not engaged, right? So this is where, as educators, we can solve some of these problems by the way that we teach, and also by really understanding what is student engagement. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about that, and then I'll show where the technology can help. So when I saw this chart for the first time, I was really surprised that so many students feel this way. I thought I was the only one, but many students feel this way. Even students who have the best grades, they also feel this way. All right, so student engagement. I wanted to quick share a story that'll help us understand this, and then we'll get into the sample lesson. So has anyone heard of this story of finding the average pilot size? So in the 1940s, after World War II, the planes were getting faster and faster, but there were still many crashes. So in the late 1940s, on one day, the US military lost 17 planes in one day because of crashes, right? So the idea was that the engineers believed that the seat, the cockpit of the plane, where they sit, it doesn't fit. They think that was the reason why the planes were crashing. So when they first built planes in the US, they made some calculation. How big should the seat be? And then they think in 1940s when the plane started crashing, the engineers believed that the average American must have changed. They must have gotten taller. Maybe they got bigger. The seats do not fit anymore. So the United States government decided to find out what is the average pilot size. And they believed that if we found the average pilot size, like is the average pilot this tall, this wide? If we found that out, that would lead to lower crashes. Okay? It's a very interesting theory. So there's a guy, he's a lieutenant, Gilbert Daniels. He went to Harvard College. And he surveyed 4,000 pilots. And he measured their body across 10 important dimensions. So how tall they were, their arm length, their weight. All of those things he calculated to identify the average pilot. And then they will build a chair in the plane for that pilot. So my question to you, another Nearpod activity, is what percent of the 4,000 pilots do you think fit the average? So Lieutenant Gilbert Daniels surveyed all of them, and he found a single averaged everything. So my question is, what percent of the pilots were actually average across all 10 dimensions? So you can take a guess. There's no right or wrong. And what I have here on this TV is what I see as the teacher on Nearpod. So I can see all of your responses come in. Okay? But because I don't want to embarrass anybody, I'm gonna click on this so you don't see each other's responses. So pick any percent. So give you another 10 seconds. All right, I'm going to share our results out with the class. So the gray are the people who did not answer. So you need to catch up. You need to catch up. Some of you believed it's 40%. Some of you said 10%. Some of you said 2%. Some of you said 0%. So the correct answer is actually 10%. So very good to whoever picked that. So of 4,000 pilots, only 10% of those pilots was really in the average. It's very interesting. So what does this mean when we consider the education context? So maybe you know where I'm going with this. So a couple of years ago, a very famous researcher at Harvard, I took his class. His name is Todd Rose. Has any of you heard of Todd Rose? He writes a book. It's called The End of Average. The End of Average. So what do we think he's saying by that? So this picture on the slide or in your device is showing you that the average student doesn't really exist. So what you see here is you can calculate an average based on math. You can figure out the average. But when you look at a student, and let's say this first column are how quickly a student can think, how smart they are, if they are a visual learner, if they like to talk. All of these things are like this, right? So we call this jagged, like jagged. So every student is actually like this. So no single student is exactly the same, just like no pilot is exactly the same. Everybody is different. So why is this important to know? So in your classroom, if you design a classroom, right, that's for the average, you're really designing a classroom from nobody. So this is the argument that Todd Rose was making. So the average classroom, all students sit like this, and the teacher gives all students the same thing, because all students are the same. There's an average. I think I'm going to teach to the average. But in real life, every student is different. So where this research connects with technology is that Nearpod and technology has the potential to personalize learning, to make learning different for every child, right? So I wanted to ask you this question, and you can talk with the people next to you again. Like, I'm curious if you agree or disagree with Todd Rose's argument. If you agree or disagree with that if you design classroom for the average, the classroom is not good for anybody. Do you agree or disagree? So take 2 minutes to turn to someone next to you and have a conversation about that.
Answer is probably the opposite. Yeah, you should design something. Well, yeah, I mean, I would agree with that.
That's why it's agree or disagree. It's controversial.
You could sort of look for exceptional aspects of each child. You don't have the tools.
I love this lecture.
Oh,
Yeah, really. I mean, the
thank
way,
you.
The way you have in the lecture, really good.
Yeah.
Because they have to know all the things. What do you say?
I hope they can understand too.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
I
I think
understand.
they can understand.
Change the system.
Okay, another 20 seconds, so try to wrap up your last thoughts. Start to take this out. All right, so let's bring it back together again. So, what are your thoughts? Who would like to speak? Anyone? Does anyone have any thoughts?
Okay, I think that ideally you want to be able to make the education system for each individual child, but practically, I think it's extremely difficult.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's got to be a combination of both. If you're going to get a lot of kids, you still have to give them basic education. So you need to cover a large ground, but also have some ability to go special class work.
Thank you. Right, so that's a real challenge, is you have so many students and they all need to learn. They all need to learn efficiently, but you also want to engage them. So it's a delicate balance, right? Was there another hand here? Someone else?
Yeah, so I think what you had said is a really excellent point. Like, the practicality makes it almost impossible to not have some kind of path, not have some kind of standardization for how teachers can actually approach students in a way that would be beneficial to the quote-unquote most amount of students. But, you know, of course, like, is there, like, we have to agree with the thesis that of course there is no average, right? It doesn't really cater to anybody, especially. So, interesting thought exercise.
Thank you, thank you. I appreciate that, because the both of the comments here is talking about our responsibility also as teachers, right? It sounds really good to personalize, but as teachers, we also have a responsibility to educate all children, right? So it's controversial, and I think it's okay to feel that way and have both ideas live inside of your head. Just always thinking about that, but it's okay to not say I 100% agree. It really depends. So I wanted to, because what I'm doing is sharing some context with you, because as we talk about personalization and engagement, this will help us experience the lesson together. So I'm setting a little bit of context for us. So let's say we believe in personalized learning. Let's say we believe that no matter what you do, there's some degree of making the experience different for every child. So then what does that mean for understanding student engagement? Do we think that all students are curious about the same things? No? Have you had a classroom where some students just could care less about English? They don't care. They're thinking about other things. Most? Did I hear like someone? Uh-oh. Most of your students? Are all students passionate about the same things? Nope. So in a typical like American high school, sports is really big, right? A lot of people play sports. And a common thing is that if you don't do school really well, maybe you do sports really well, right? But what about all of the other types of activities that happen at a school, right? Maybe a student starts a language club. Maybe a student starts a card club. So all of these moments are evidence to that every student may be interested by different things. So student engagement, and this is really a combination of research, but I didn't want to just lay out all of the research in front of you. You can also find it online by reading, is everything in the yellow box. So everything in the yellow box is student engagement. If a student is engaged, the student is curious, student is interested, student is very excited and likely has a passion for that particular task or activity. So when students are engaged, students are motivated, and that motivation will lead to whatever it is that is the outcome. Maybe it's a student scoring high on a test. Maybe it's a student who is producing a piece of art. That could be the outcome. So I wanted to share the second, what I believe is the second main argument that complements averages, is that if we believe that human potential is a bell curve and is like this, so that means not every student is smart. Maybe some are smart, but most are just in the middle there, like okay, and then some are just okay, there's certain problems, right, over in this category. If we believe that, then personalized learning and student engagement doesn't matter. So I wanted to show you, maybe I'll do this here. I want to show you what I mean. Can you see the board here for those who are on the top? So you've all seen this before, right? Right, the statistic. You've taken these classes before. I know it made me really miserable when I was studying for the GREs and having to learn this again, right? So if we believe that students' potential, that only some right here, let's say, are likely to succeed and be smart, then we also believe that some are not. Some are not going to be successful. And then everybody in the middle, right? Everybody in the middle is the same. Maybe they should study a little bit more, but they're not that good, so they're not in this category. This curve here is a normal distribution curve, right? And if we think about the tests that our students take, the tests that students take, whether they're in Korea or in the United States, is for this group here, right? All of these students are not going to get a certain score, and those who do get that score is here. So the test in many ways is designed for the average student, because the average student, everyone in this category, they're not going to score that particular necessary score. Only those in this area will. So the test is based on the assumption that if you work really hard, and you study, you will move from here and you will move right over in this category, right? So it's based on something that is similar to the idea of averages. So if we believe this is the model, if we believe this, student engagement may not be that important, because you just would believe naturally if students just work hard, they'll be successful. That's all they have to do. If they just work hard, they will be successful. So the reality is that if you believe that all students can be here, then this whole chart is irrelevant. If you believe that every student has the potential to be here, then this chart will not look like this. It will not look like this. So what personalized learning can do for students and for teachers is start to change your mindset around what it takes to help students succeed. And perhaps the question I have for you, not just you all as teachers, but with everybody that I meet in education is, do you honestly believe that all your children can be successful? Or do you have in your mindset that only some will be there, but most others, it's going to be really hard, right? So this is it's a very controversial question, and I would argue that in the United States education system is built like this. It's built to make sure that only some students will do here, but most students will be here, right? Instead of every student having the opportunity to succeed. So technology, all right, the role of technology is to help students and teachers start to move away from potentially thinking, oh, I just have to study harder. If I study for 3 hours, all I need is another 5 hours, and then it'll be fine. But that way of thinking goes against also personalized learning, right? If every student is motivated by something different, then perhaps it's not about just the number of hours that a student spends doing the same thing again. Maybe something else can be changed. So I wanted to share what that lesson could look like. Right? If all of our students could experience something different and you have some choice, you have some moments where you can be excited about the content, you have moments when you're talking with each other, you have moments when you feel like safe, that this lesson itself isn't going to be on a written test. So again, you have access to this. This is me compiling some research. These are the conditions for student engagement. So basically the idea is if you build these 4 pieces into your lesson, you will create a very good environment for students to learn language and be excited and passionate about that language. So autonomy, that just means that students have some choice. Belonging, that means that students feel safe, especially when they're learning to speak English. Many students are uncomfortable and they're shy. In my work at Chatting, I see that all the time. Students may know so much, but when they get in front of people, they get nervous, right? So how can you measure that on a test, right? Students are just nervous. Competence, students need to believe that they can do it. If you give them something that is really, 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 really hard, they will lose interest and motivation. So they need to believe that it's within their ability, right? And the last piece is meaningful learning. Is what you're teaching meaningful to them? So as we experience this lesson together, these are the 4 things that I would like you to think about. And my argument is that if we do these 4 things, then that will lead to curiosity, motivation. It'll lead to all of those things. Okay? Are you ready for the lesson? Okay. So I'm going to get these ready because this will require a little bit of participation here. Yeah, so these are from Boston. So you can probably get them here, right? You might be able to get them here, but I brought these all the way from Boston. So there is meaning behind this. You might be able to order it online, but I carefully got them and put them in my bag and brought them here. So they were brought with love, right? All right, so here we go. All right, I want you to imagine that you're 12. Okay, so put on that hat on, okay? I don't hear a lot of laughing and giggling yet. You're just like, oh, you're 12. Okay, I'll just be my same person. So there's probably a lot of chit chat. There's probably a lot of, you come in, you're like, oh, another day of school. I wonder what this lesson is going to be about. Oh, I hope it's not boring, but statistically, it's probably going to be boring, right? So I want to start the lesson with a virtual reality experience. So here on your device, you can use your finger and you can move the screen around. So what we know in research for learning language is that rich, detailed pictures are really important. Not just a cartoon or a flat two-dimensional image. We need to create room in our lesson to show these types of images. They're much more interesting to look at, right? So let me ask, what do you see in this picture? What do you see? Reef? Fish? What's that? Divers? You see divers? What's that? Seaweed. Seaweed? What colors do you see? Would you be scared or happy or nervous if you were a diver? Frightened? Oh, somebody said frightened? Okay. How would you feel if you were here? Would you feel relaxed? Fun? Do you think anyone can be a diver? Probably? No? Physical condition is important. Claustrophobia. What if, do you think divers have training?
Yes.
So what might be a good reason to be a diver, let's say?
Wanting to explore a new world.
New world? Wanting to explore?
Study the ocean.
Study the ocean. So we've lived in this environment for a little bit, and I want to share a statistic that some of you may already know, that the ocean is very polluted. So where these divers are swimming in, it can be very polluted. And it's a crazy statistic that takes almost 500 years for plastic to break down in the ocean. Right? A lot of people throw things into the ocean, or they throw it into a place that somehow ends up in the ocean, and it stays there. So what do you see here in this picture? Eating a plastic bag. So in a lesson, normally when I was at Nearpod, I was making some of the content, we wanted to have two objectives at all times. You don't have to do this. I like to do this. This is just making sure that students are learning language and they're learning content together. I have found that when students are learning about a topic that is interesting to them, it makes it easier for them to learn the language. Does that make sense? So when the topic is genuinely exciting and interesting, students want to talk. They want to write about it. It's not just having them write and talk because writing and talking is good. It's, can you find a topic that is really exciting for them? And that topic can come alive through pictures. If I had more time, I would make this language objective a little bit longer. I might include some scaffolds for the student. For example, describe the impacts of pollution using this frame. Blank causes blank. Or I might say something like, describe the impacts of this pollution by using the following words, X, Y, Z. Right? So I would make this a little bit longer, but you get the idea. Two objectives. So for newcomers, level 1 English learners, a lot of research says that students are capable of having really deep, complex thoughts, but they may not know the language to speak it, to say it. So what's one way you can understand their thinking without them having to speak? Can they draw? So this is a drawing activity on Nearpod. And I'm going to ask that you take, I'd say about 2 minutes to draw yourself as a diver and what you might see in the ocean. So I built some background for you. We went into the ocean. You saw that. And then we also looked at a turtle eating plastic. So I want you to imagine and be as creative as you can. Draw yourself as a diver. So I'm going to model this up here. I'm embarrassing myself already. Right, my guy needs oxygen. Maybe I want to give this person some green hair. Right? And when you're ready, click the blue button here, submit button. So the teacher will see all of your responses live in real time. So as soon as you submit, I'll see it. You can see here. Oh. Oh. You can go on here too, on your computer. So in your picture, I should see a diver, right? So make sure you draw yourself as one. Oh, this one is guest. It's the guest Wi-Fi. Let's see if Vivian, can you help her get on the internet? She'll help you get on the internet. You thought I wasn't going to come up here, right? I'm up here. So another 30 seconds and submit what you have, all right? So 10 seconds. All right, so I'm going to start sharing some of these drawings, and when I share these drawings, they're going to remain anonymous. So we won't know who did it. We can hide the names. But if you want your name to be shown, I can certainly do that as well. And then the rest of us, let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. Okay, here we go. So remember I asked, draw yourself as a diver and what you might see. So these are the things that you might see in the ocean. So I'm going to share out a visual, and you can see on your device, all of your devices, what this person did. So what is this? Who has a guess? Clownfish? Pufferfish? Happy? This creature is happy? Okay. So it's interesting, right? Because when I saw this, I was wondering if this is the diver or if this is the fish. But maybe it's a fish diver, right? So I think that's okay. Good job. All right, this one is very interesting. Let's take a look. And it'll also show up on your device as well. So I really like this.
I like the colors.
Like the colors? So I can see there's a fish. It's orange. Do you think this diver is happy? Is this a happy diver? Is this a human diver? What is the thing on the back? What do we think? A rock? Did someone say a rock? A big rock? Okay, that's what I thought as well. That's what I thought as well. All right, so with Nearpod, because I have this remote, I can pick any drawing. So I'm going to actually go around and I'm going to ask if one of you would like to pick one to share. So this next one, whoever is embarrassed by it is not my fault, right? Would you like to pick one? Yep. So you can scroll through and pick one that you would like everyone to see.
This one.
And then click share.
Share.
Wow. Wow. What do we see here? So if I saw a student produce this, right? Let's say this student is very shy, normally in class, and the student does not like to speak up. If I did not have this activity, I would just assume that the student does not understand. But because I put this low risk, we say low risk because there's not a lot of stress. It can be fun. The student will do this art. And now this art is a demonstration for everyone in the class to see. Now every student in their mind can compare, oh, what did I do? What did this student do? And this student even used some vocabulary as well. So drawing something very simple can be used to extract comprehension, right? And oftentimes I've seen students love when their work is being shared and they giggle. They love to giggle. Even though they might not like their names to be called out, but they love when their work is recognized. So if you did this work, we don't know who you are, but we've just spent a couple of minutes talking about it. So the question for you, whoever did this, is how do you feel about yourself as the whole class has discussed your particular work? So good job. I wanted to get us an opportunity to also use this as well, but I think for the sake of time, we're still going to use this, but I'm going to do a couple more different activities before we touch this. We're going to watch a video, right? So these are the different ways in which I can input content for a student. One way is I talk like this. I talk and I say, I talk, and you remember. Another way is I might use technology around me. The TV is technology. The internet is technology. These are the things we already have access to. So I want you to, with a partner, look at these questions for just 30 seconds. When we watch the video together, these are the questions I want you to think about. So it's very good practice with language learners to tell them what to expect. Don't just say, we're going to watch a video, play the video, and then ask them questions. Every moment is an opportunity to learn language, to learn vocabulary. So I'm giving us a chance to see this. If you have any challenges with any of the words, this is a good time to clarify. Would you want to swim in this pool? What do you see is put into this pool? And do you believe the narrator is optimistic? And maybe a student says, what is the word optimistic? Right. What is optimistic? Are you ready to watch the video? All right. So I'm going to allow this video to only be played on this device for now.
Up to 20 million tons of plastic goes into the ocean every year. That's as much as 3 kilograms per person each year. Plastics make up roughly half of each person's contribution to ocean pollution. Fertilizers, manure, and untreated sewage pollute the ocean at a rate of 1.4 kilograms per person per year. This causes hypoxia, or dead zones, in the ocean, killing off marine wildlife. Waste oil from vehicles and machines enters the ocean at a rate of 180 grams per person every year. And other pollutants, like mercury, are introduced to the ocean in small but devastating amounts. But this is not inevitable. We can reduce pollution by rethinking and modifying the way we produce and consume. We can reverse this trend and help reclaim the ocean for its rightful owners.
All right, so thank you so much. Let me just ask, how did you feel How do you feel from watching a video like that? Do you disgusted? Serious? It feels very serious. Very good. Depressed? You feel sad? Is the music sad? It's kind of sad music, right? When I show videos like this, let's say to groups to English learners, it doesn't really matter so much what level that they're in, because we can have so much conversation about this, even if I'm working with level 1 beginner English learners, because it's not really important, all the difficult language and statistics. We can still talk about the music, we can talk about the dirty things that was placed into the pool, and we can imagine a child or an animal swimming in that pool. So it's okay to have videos like this. Even if you think it's hard, it really depends on how you talk about the video. I like this video because it shows children, and children can relate to each other. It shows a pool, and kids can imagine what that looks like. It's more interesting to see this than for me to just talk about pollution, right? They can actually see it. So, do you want to swim in this pool? No. Do you remember what was put into the pool? Plastic, oil, metal, mercury, dirty. Do you think the narrator is optimistic? At the end, what made you think it's optimistic? There's something we can do, right? So I wanted to show you towards the end of this video, there is a call to action. Save our ocean. So 3 words, save our ocean, right? So this narrator is telling people to do something. It's not just let me tell you what happens. This is a opportunity for all of us to do something. So this person believes that something can be changed, right? So I wanted to give you an example of how you might have a conversation using a video like this. That if you watch it, you might think, oh, it's too complicated. Many times when we show videos, we might even mute the video. We mute it because listening to it may not be important right away. It's just visually what do students see, right? So we're going to play a game, a quick game, and this game is called Time to Climb. I actually was on the team that designed the look and feel of this activity in Nearpod. Would like you to answer some questions, and for you to get this right, this one is going to win one of these 3 prizes. So you have to pay attention. You will pick your character, you pick your avatar, and then based on how fast and how accurate you answer the questions correctly, you will win. So it's speed and accuracy. Make sure you turn down the volume a little bit on your device because you're going to start to hear some music as well. So we had a conversation about the video. We talked about this. And I'd like you to do a quick activity. Let me know if you have need any help getting on.
Where's the name? Oh, no, you're Kiva. I'm Kiva? Yeah, you're Kiva. You sure? I can't.
Okay, so when I click start, that's when the activity will begin. I think you have like a timer, so you have to also do it within the time. Most of you will be able to do it within the time limit, but you have to do it fast. Okay? All right. We're going to, well, let me do this. So you can pick your... Oh, look at all of us. Here we go. Here we go. You ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Start. Make sure you select your answer. Make sure you get it fast and correct. Oh, got it wrong. If you get it right or wrong, you'll be able to see it. I'm picking the wrong answers, by the way, so don't copy me. If you think that's the way to win, that's not the way to win. Uh-oh, this person just dropped to number 3. Okay, this is the last question. So here we go. So it's a tight group up there. It's very tight. It's a very close race. It's a very close race. So hopefully you are quick with your fingers. Oh, I got it right now. Okay, let's see who won. Let's see who won. KGUV with 2,600 points, and coming in number 2 is Kiva with 2,563 points. Very good. Wow, I feel like I'm at like a game show host or something. Okay, so who is KGUV? Kelsey, okay. So I have a small and a medium shirt or a hat. You can pick which one you'd like. You don't need a t-shirt? Okay. Kiva, we can go to number 2 if you prefer. Bruce? Okay, very good.
I think, what size is that?
One of them is small, one of them is medium.
I'll take this crimson.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very good. All right, we'll have more opportunities. Good job. Good job. So, all right. So thank you for playing that activity. So technology, right? So many different ways. We can have students draw. We can have students put out their comments on a Collaborate board. We can play games like this. But there are also a lot of moments when I want students to maybe to do something on physical paper. So what you see here, this is a picture of, it's a chart, and it's divided into 3 categories. Looks like, sounds like, and feels like. And we actually have been practicing this for the last 15 minutes in this lesson. We have been talking about this. So if you do this activity, you may have students actually get a big piece of paper and divide it into 3 categories. What does it look like? What does it sound like? And what does it feel like? So I want to show you some pictures, right? And have some conversation around that as well. So, I know, right? What does it sound like? Can any of you make the sound? What does it sound like? Wrong. Right? So all of you have your adult's hat on, but if you were children, this would be you can have a lot of great and fun conversation around this. And whatever you say, I would write on the board. I would make sure all of your comments are documented. What does this sound like? Right? It's kind of nasty, right? If you were doing this, a lot of trash. So I have pictures, and I'm also scaffolding language as well. I want to give very clear directions on what I want students to talk about. And I don't just have them look at the picture and discuss. I try to teach them the language beforehand so then they can be successful. They can do this really well. And my job is to not trick them, is to help them answer the question and participate, right? So at this point, I do want to take a quick break, but before we do, I'm going to announce that I brought this with me as well for you to try. This is an Oculus Quest, and this is a virtual reality headset. So I have some activities loaded on here that you can try during the break. All right, so we're going to take a quick 5-minute break, and if you would like to try this, just come down here, and I'm going to show you on video what this activity is. And if we have time at the end, we can also, if you didn't get a chance, I can make sure that you have an opportunity to do this. This is the type of technology that we use at Chat-ing for children. So let's take a look at what it is here. It's when you are running this with your classrooms, you don't need one for every child. You can share. So I've seen teachers in a classroom of 30 children just share one device because it's so much fun that you want to use it for very special occasions. So we're going to take a 5-minute break. And you might see me walk around and do some strange things here. That's because I'm setting up a space for you to walk around and draw in a 3D environment. So we're going to take a 5-minute break from now. And then if you want, you can come down here and we can try this on as well.
San Francisco, right on the main line. Like,
I want you to look at this. Look at this world that this person made, right, on this device. So for those of you who just had a few seconds to experience, you probably were just drawing lines. I saw you were just sort of doing this. But look at this, some of this art here. This person is drawing a house, a building. So I had set the stage to be this small, but if you move chairs around, you can have a big space and the students can draw like this. They can come all the way here and they can go over the way here and they can draw down here. Let's say you're drawing flowers on the ground. You can do that as well. So sharing with those who are waiting, like when in the lesson might I use this device? So there was a moment when students were drawing a diver in the ocean. And I might ask students to do an activity like this. I want students to draw an ocean with trash. So students are drawing bottles, trash all over, and drawing fish, right? And I say, okay, you can sit down. Another student try this. So students they keep adding. Everyone's adding like their trash, right? And then I might ask students to come up individually, and I might ask them to erase, use the erase button, and try to erase the trash in the picture, right? So students can experience what it's like to make it beautiful again, right? These are small things that we can do with this device, and I can tell you if your student is on this, they will never forget, right? These are the moments that I think technology can have a very important role. Sometimes it's not just software. You have to buy it. You have to invest in a hardware. But like I said, this thing was like $400 US. So it's not that expensive. It's like getting a new video game console, right? It's not that expensive. And the game that we all just did, Google Tilt Brush, was $20 US, the game itself. So one classroom can share this entire experience, right? So many ways you can experiment with drawing. Students can write. Imagine being able to write sentences 3D, and you can look over here, and you can look over here, and then students can write to each other, and they can decorate their words, right? It's a very interesting way to learn language in this environment, and I really recommend that if you have a chance to try using these types of technologies in your classrooms to see what will make students really engaged. So hopefully you had a good break. I wanted to switch gears and close it off, and then I'll leave time at the end for any questions you might have. I wanted to share this slide. I'll quick explain what this slide means, and then when you have this PowerPoint, you can also understand it as well. So this, I know it's very hard to see, but you can look at your own computer or your phone. It might be a little bit bigger. Technology is part of all of our practice as educators. It's not just instructional technology, right? There are some technology that will help you know who all of your students are, a roster of all of your students. There's technologies around that. There's technology to help you collect grades in a very efficient way. There are technologies that help you collect data. So all of your drawings that you did today is saved in my lesson. So at any time, I can go back and print a report of all of your individual work. And I can show you what your work was. So this is just a graphic that shows that technology is much bigger than just being in the classroom. There's so many other uses of it as well. I wanted to, so for the rest of the hour, I want to talk a little bit about distance learning. This is an area that I'm passionate about and what I do research on at the university. I think all of you who have the app or you're using it on your computer, you should be able to see this view. But if you're not, you can look at the screen up here. I think the text is a little bit small. So what I'll do is walk around and make sure you have access to this. So this is, our team was able to translate this as well. This is from a news article, and then we translated the most important parts in Korean. And what I'd like you to do is spend some time reading it, and then we will discuss some different approaches to solving this problem. So I'll walk around and make sure that you have access to this article. If you don't, you can look for someone next to you who may have it. Raise your hand if you're having a hard time seeing it or you're not sitting next to somebody who has it. Okay, one back here, one over here. Yep. Have you seen this? Okay. Oh, okay. So take some moments to read. This is a very interesting problem in the United States. I don't know if the same problem exists here, but I think we can imagine the problem. Give you another minute to finish reading. Oh, PDOJ. Yep. Raise your hand if you would like a little bit more time. If you like more time. Okay. So this is a case about online learning. So as a student, online learning is a topic that I spend a lot of time trying to understand. I personally believe, this is just my opinion, that in the future we will see more types of online learning. Okay, it doesn't mean that in-person learning will disappear, but there might be opportunities to do both, in-person and online. There's a special word for that in research. We call it blended learning. You might have heard of this term before. So I picked this particular article because my classmate was the former deputy superintendent. So he was at the top. He ran this district. This is probably top 20 districts in the United States by size. So just imagine 110,000 students are in this school district. 9,000 of them are English learners. So they could be from different countries where English is not spoken and they moved to the US. There are 7,000 teachers and 220 schools that make up this district. So imagine that you are the person who runs this whole district. Think about how complicated it is to work this district. Now, one of the challenges that I'm very familiar with in the United States is teacher turnover. Have any of you heard of turnover before? Teacher turnover. Turnover. So it means that teachers who go into the public schools may not stay teaching for long. They may leave and do other work. Some of the reasons that they may leave include their pay. It may include they're stressed. It may include that it's not a fun place to work. A lot of stress, not a fun place to work. So this case is about, in this district, there are not enough teachers. There are not enough teachers. So what do you do when there aren't enough teachers? So this person, the superintendent, says online teaching might fill a gap now, but he doesn't think it's ideal. It's not good. It's not great, right? So this is a common feeling that many teachers have in the United States is online teaching, I don't know, is the quality good, right? Is it really rigorous type of learning? And then we also talked about the need, the responsibility to educate. If you don't have teachers, where will those students go? Do you just not have class? So it's a very complicated challenge. And if you were the person at the top, you are thinking about this. If I need to have teachers teaching, but if I can't recruit them, where else can I go to find them? So this problem is not unique to Shelby. It's in so many districts in the United States where there are not enough teachers to teach math, to teach science, to teach English. For English language learners, teaching English language, I think that the current ratio is around 200 English learners for one teacher of ESL. One ESL teacher for 200 ESL students. Can you imagine how you would do that? How would you approach that problem, right? So I wanted to share with you a few different ways that I've seen online learning really take off. And as some of you who are going into the classroom, or some of you who are going to start your own education businesses, to think about, will you ever have this problem? Will you ever have a problem where there's so many students who need your help, but there are not enough of you? There are not enough of you. How will you tackle that problem? So thank you for reading that. First of all, do you have any questions about just what you read? Any questions on the case? I want to show you a couple of different ways that I've seen online learning work really well. So I'll go through a couple of slides. It might be hard to read up there because of the lights, so you can look at the screen that's in front of you. So there's different stages of online learning. If you do online learning, you need a lot of technology. You need to think about engagement, which is what we talked about in the first half of the hour. But you also need to think about what technology do you need to allow students to have an online experience in general, right? So this is called a flipped classroom. Raise your hand if you've heard of this term before, right? Most of you have. I can see many hands. So I've seen this type of classroom look very different. The idea is that students, when they get home, they learn some things on the internet. They learn some things on their own at home. And then they show up to class, and the teacher knows that the student already prepared a lot. So Khan Academy, if you've heard of Khan Academy, this is their model. So imagine your student going home watching videos on the internet. And then when the student comes to class, instead of the teacher lecturing, the teacher can have a more interesting, active learning and teaching experience. Right? So this is called a flipped classroom. It's the first stage to doing something online. It's like the stage one. If you're teaching English, you might assign homework for students, right? So you might think of, if I give students homework and let's say they have internet at home, what might I ask them to do, right? So this is the first one. It's pretty easy to set up. I want to show you a different model here. Okay, it's a little bit more complicated. So this model, I believe, is more common in Korea. Right? So earlier in our conversation, we talked about scale. We have so many students who need help, right? So many students. So how do we personalize that instruction if we have so many students? So here is one way to do that. One teacher is teaching live, remote, and then students in different physical locations will see that teacher. So on the top, maybe is one classroom in one city. On the second below is a different classroom in a different city, but both classrooms are accessing that lecture in real time. They're both accessing it. And you'll see that in each classroom there's also a teacher, right? So one way to do distance learning is, let's say that teacher there is an expert in teaching ESL. And let's say these two teachers, they're very good, but they're not experts. So this is one way to still use that expert teacher to reach many, many, many classrooms, right? Now, the challenge with this is it requires still a school. It requires you to have a building, right? Both of these classrooms need a building to house 50, 60 children. So if you are starting your own business and you want to leverage teachers, let's say from the US or from different countries, or maybe you're really good at teaching English and you wanted a teacher to teach another subject, you would still need to find your classroom. You need to find a building, and that costs money. It's very expensive. So what could be another way to do this, right? So I'll show you the final model, which is kind of a very interesting approach because it combines being able to scale as well as offering some degree of personalized instruction. So in this model, you still have one teacher who's doing live instruction, but you'll notice that the groups are a little bit smaller, right? Maybe there's two groups. And students are accessing the learning from where? Their home, right? They're accessing this from their own house. So can you imagine a setting in the near future where students can learn without physically going to a place? The time it takes to get to school is time that they may not be spent learning, right? And also the cost of building a classroom and having students come takes time and it takes resources. So we're starting to see a lot of this action happening as well. The problem with this type of approach is when students are not physically together, it's not as engaging, right? So as a teacher, as maybe if you're interested in starting your own after-school program or joining one, these are the questions that you need to think about, is how do I balance student engagement and motivation with something that can scale and work and serve many, many, many students. So these are questions that I think a lot about at my university, at Chatting. One sort of really important discovery for us when it comes to teaching language is that it has to be social. Kids need to be physically together, or if they're remote, they need to be talking and communicating and having dialogue. That learning a language isn't a one-to-one experience. Today, this classroom would be so big, right? Imagine if all of you were children. It'd be really hard for me to know all of your names and know all of your interests. So I need to figure out a way to make it into much smaller groups. At the same time, I also need to figure out how I can best serve all of you, how I can reach all of you, right? So I wanted to kind of end on some of the research that we've collected over at Chatting. This is sort of after a year of testing. We ran 50 pilot classes in 2018 out of incubator at Harvard. So an incubator is a program that helps new companies develop. And all of those companies are developed by students, Harvard students. So we had an opportunity to participate in the incubator. We had a lot of mentorship and guidance, and we ran about 50 classes to kids in small groups, about 5 or 6. And what we found is that language learning is social. We need students to be engaged. That's number 2. And number 3, we didn't touch on this as much, but technology can really help with this, which is frequent low-risk assessment. Frequent low-risk assessment. So it's frequent means you might do an assessment multiple times throughout one 40-minute lesson. Low risk meaning that it doesn't feel like it's a test that students have to get an A on. It's a way for you to understand as the teacher, is the student getting better or getting worse? So frequency, how many times you do it is really important. And Nearpod, this tool that I showed you today, is one of the primary resources that we use to do live formative assessments. So we actually today did many of them. Drawing, we did that, right? We took polls. We did a collaborate board where we're writing all of our comments. And I also asked you for verbal discussion, right? I put out a question and I asked you to respond to the question. That's a way of me collecting feedback. Every moment that you speak or you write is a moment for me to collect feedback. Any time that, like right now, that I'm just talking, I just talk, is me not collecting feedback because I don't know what you all are thinking or how much of you are understanding. So Nearpod was able to help us with that. I know I have a few minutes remaining here. I'll show a quick video and then the remaining sort of time I'll sort of use to answer some of your questions as well, either about the lesson we did in the first half or about this video.
해주시는 부분이 있고 아이들이 하시는 부분은 자꾸 그러니까 아이가 좀 지루한 면이 있었고요. 영어하다가 거부감이 굉장히 많았어요. 근데 책임 수업하면서 영어가 재밌다더라고요. 그래서 저는 되게 깜짝 놀랐거든요.
제가 지금까지 했던 영어 수업들 막 지루하고 따분하고 책으로 공부하고 했는데 세팅해서 해보니까 몸도 쓰고 그다음에 실제로 그거를 여러 가지 상황에 적용해보니까 수반이 되버리고
영어에 대한 트라우마는 많이 극복한 것 같고요. 좀 쉽게 생각하고 흥미를 좀 느끼고 있어요. 이제는 공부를 할 수 있을 것 같다. 그러니까 지금 당장 뭐 시험을 봐서 잘 볼 것 같다 이런 건 아니고요. 되게 흥미로운 과목이라고 생각을 해야 돼요.
So that's sort of my current work at Chatting. We work with a pretty incredible team, and we're always thinking about engagement. So how can we make sure that students are motivated when they're learning language? Nearpod is not the only tool that we use. You know, the Oculus, other apps, we bring that into our teaching. And we also use Zoom, right? Zoom to connect. It's like Skype to connect kids in Korea with teachers in the US. And as we do this work, school districts in the US reach out to me to ask about distance learning, like Shelby, like districts that are in rural areas of the country that need more teachers. They ask, how can you teach my students, right? How can you provide that expert if that expert doesn't physically live where I am? So with that said, I have a few more minutes to answer any of your questions, but I'll close a few minutes early. And thank you so much for your time inviting me to come here and speak with all of you. I hope you were able to take away something new. And if anything, to remember that we started this conversation talking about your biggest learning, right, between the ages of 13 and 18. And I'd like you, as you continue on your education path, to think about how you might create those memorable moments for your children as well in any subject that they're learning. So thank you so much for your time, and hope to stay in touch. My email's up there if you want to reach out with any questions or any materials. Certainly happy to talk one-on-one as well via online or a call. So thank you all again, and I'm here if you have any remaining questions. Yes?